Good morning, everyone. Good morning, good morning. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Danbury. My name is Sam McCoy. I have been a member here for nearly 20 years at this point, I think. I think it's next month. This marks 20. In any case, I'm currently serving as the chair of the Sunday Services Committee, and I'm glad to be with you this morning. Just a friendly reminder, if you have an electronic device with you, now is a great time to silence it before the service begins. We are grateful that you all are here with us this morning here in the fellowship hall, as well as our friends joining us electronically online. Whether this is your first or second time with us, or maybe your 500th time with us, we are stronger because you are here. As we gather, we also want to respectfully acknowledge that our physical building here in Danbury is on the traditional land of the Paugussett people. Before we get started this morning, I want to invite you to greet your neighbors. If you're here in the fellowship hall, say hello to those around you, give a wave. If you're online, check in with the other folks in the chat box, and we'll take a moment before we officially begin. So now to officially move into announcement mode, we have a few announcements we want to highlight this morning. And one of them is our speaker today, who is the Reverend Craig Schwallenberg, who is joining us. Some of you may remember he was with us last September, and we wanted to give him a chance to say hello and introduce himself again.
Hello, it's a pleasure to be your guest pulpiteer once again. It's always great to worship with you here in Danbury. For those seeing me for the first time, I often go by Reverend Greg. My preferred pronouns are per and pers, and I'm happy to tell you what those mean. Though he and they will also work, I will not be offended. I'm a Unitarian Universalist community minister, and as your game minister, I explore where spirituality and play meet in our lives. And I'm happy to chat more about that after the service. Thank you for letting me be with you this morning.
Excellent. Thank you, Reverend Craig. We will look forward to your message in the service today. We have a special announcement about our mitten tree. So we have a couple of participants we want to invite up.
We want to invite you to participate in our mitten tree project.
During the service today, we will set up a little Christmas tree in the foyer with paper mittens on it.
Each mitten has a gift request on it for someone in the Interfaith AIDS Ministry.
If you are able to buy an extra holiday gift this year, please take a mitten from the tree on your way out today.
Please leave us your name and phone number so we know who is getting which gift. Then take the mitten home, buy the gift, and bring it in with the mitten by Sunday, December 10th.
This year you can wrap any gifts you bring.
Thank you for giving.
Right. Excellent. Thank you so much. We will keep an eye out for the mitten tree at the end of the service. There are just a couple of other announcements I want to highlight. We're headed, I think we all know, headed into our Thanksgiving week this week. But following the week after Thanksgiving, we have a couple of things going on Thursday, November 30th. There's an invitation to participate with the Hindu prayer group that meets here in our building on Clapboard Ridge. So if you would be interested in participating, please RSVP to Sierra Marie so we can get a sense of how many people are planning to be there. And the other thing is that after the service on Sunday, December 3rd, it will be our annual holiday party. And we would love to see you stick around after the service that day to trim the tree and engage in all sorts of festive activities. And if there's anyone who is really motivated to get a tree and bring it here, that opportunity still exists. So speak to Sierra Marie if that's something you're interested in as well. All right, so I think that brings us to the end of our announcements, which means that it's time to light our chalice. So I invite you to join me with the words that are printed in your order of service and which will appear on the screen. And our Director of Religious Education, Sierra Marie, is going to light for us. Love is the spirit of this congregation, and justice is its light. This is our covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek and speak the truth in love, to help one another and celebrate life. And now we invite you to rise as you are able to join us in our hymn of welcome, which is number 163, For the Earth Forever Turning.
Please say with me our children's affirmation. The words are on the screen. We are Unitarian Universalists. We are people with open minds, loving hearts, and helping hands. We care for the earth and each other. And before I start our story, I just want to remind you, since we're talking about games today, that we have fidgets in the fellowship hall here so that you can fidget while you listen. And also we have a soul work table in the back that has some art materials and some other materials that you might like to do while you listen. Any Sunday, you are welcome to use those items. Once upon a time, there were two mules. So I need my donkeys. Where are you? Here you are. They were tied together in the farmyard, and they were very hungry. The farmer left 2 bowls of food in the yard for them. One for the first mule and one for the other mule. Each mule saw that the food had been left, but they were still tied together. They each tried to reach their food, but they couldn't. They were just as strong as each other, so however hard they pulled on their rope, they would never get the food. Feeling tired and out of breath, they sat down next to each other, even hungrier than before. Then the mules started to talk to each other, and they came up with an idea that would help them both get food. They went together to the first mule's food and shared it, never pulling on the rope. Once that food was gone, they went to the other mule's food and shared all of that. They both got enough food, and they happily sat down. So ends the story. Now I want to invite any children or youth who want to come downstairs for this morning's activities to come with me. We'll sing This Little Light of Mine.
One of the ways we build community each Sunday when we gather is to share the joys, the sorrows, the concerns, whatever is in our heart and significant in our lives at this given time. So this is the part of our service where we will have both silent and spoken milestones. We'll begin with the silent milestones, where you will have an opportunity, if you like, to come up, place a stone in the bowl. If you are online and you want to acknowledge a silent milestone, perhaps you want to put an X or another mark in the chat box to let us know that you're thinking of something. And when the silent milestones conclude, we'll move on to spoken milestones. Our concerns for our friends, family, near and far, and the joys we're looking forward to this week. Let's take a moment of silent reflection. We'll pause, we'll center ourselves, and then Jerry will take us into our hymn of reflection.
Our first reading is an excerpt from the first pages of The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy by Douglas Adams. I've modified it slightly. Bonus geek points to you if you know how I've modified it. I love being a minister in a faith tradition that considers Douglas Adams a potential source of wisdom and an acceptable resource for the worship service. Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, page 1. Far out in the uncharted backwaters of the unfashionable end of the western spiral arm of the galaxy lies a small, unregarded yellow sun. Orbiting this at a distance of roughly 98 million miles is an utterly insignificant little blue-green planet whose ape-descended life forms are so amazingly primitive that they still think cellular phones are a pretty neat idea. This planet has, or rather had, a problem, which was this. Most of the people living on it were unhappy for pretty much of the time. Many solutions were suggested for this problem, but most of these were largely concerned with the movements of small green pieces of paper, which was odd, because on the whole, it was not the small green pieces of paper that were unhappy. And so the problem remained. Lots of people were mean, and most of them were miserable, even the ones with cellular phones. Many were increasingly of the opinion that they'd all made a big mistake in coming down from the trees in the first place. And some said that even the trees had been a bad move and that no one should have left the oceans. And then, one Thursday, nearly 2,000 years ago, 2,000 years after one man had been nailed to a tree for saying how great it would be to be nice to people for a change, a girl sitting on her own in a small cafe in Rickmansworth suddenly realized what it was that had been going wrong all this time. And she finally knew how the world could be made a good and happy place. This time it was right. It would work. And no one would have to get nailed to anything. Our second reading is a little less fun than that one. It's from The Soul of Money by Lynn Twist. The sermon is not about that girl, by the way. It is quite possibly about her epiphany. It is most definitely about the small green pieces of paper, as is this reading from Lynn Twist's Soul of Money. Money travels everywhere, crosses all boundaries, languages, and cultures. Money, like water, ripples at some level through every life and place. It can carry our love or our fear. It can flood some of us such that we drown in a toxic sense of power over others. It can nourish and water the principles of freedom, community, and sharing. Money can affirm life, or it can be used to demean, diminish, or destroy it. It is neither evil nor good. It is an instrument. He invented it, and it belongs squarely in the human experience. But it can be used by and merged with the longings and passions of our soul. I believe that under it all, when you uncover all the things we're told to believe in, or things we are maneuvered and manipulated to believe in, or even things we choose to believe in, what deeply matters to human beings, our most universal soulful commitments and core values, are the well-being of the people we love, ourselves, and the world in which we live. We really do want a world that works for everyone. We don't want children to go hungry. We don't want violence and war to plague the planet anywhere, even if it's a distant place. We don't want torture and revenge and retribution to be instruments of government and leadership. Everyone wants a safe, secure, loving, nourishing life for themselves and the ones they love, and really for everyone. We all want a healthy planet and an opportunity for everyone to have a healthy, productive life. I also believe that under their fears and upsets, even the deepest ones, everyone wants to love and be loved and make a difference with their lives. Speaking in spiritual terms, I believe people also want an experience of their own divinity, their own connectedness with all life, and the mystery of something greater than we can comprehend. Thus endeth our readings.
We are generous people, a generous congregation. We are about to hear a form of generosity from our choir during the offertory. But this is a moment where we do sort of need to think about those little green pieces of paper and how we're going to use them to nourish this congregation. If you are with us for the first time, your presence here is your gift to us. For those who would like to donate today, there are many ways to do that. The offering plates will pass around here in the fellowship hall. There is a QR code that will appear on the screen. There is the link in the chat if you are online, and there's always a good old-fashioned check that can be mailed here to 24 Clapboard Ridge Road. So thank you for your generous offerings today.
Yonder come day, day is a breaking. Yonder come day, oh my soul. Yonder come day, day is a breaking. Sun is a rising in my soul. Yonder come day, day is a breaking. Yonder come day, oh my soul. Yonder come day, day is a breaking. Sun is a rising in my soul. Yonder come day, day is a breaking. Yonder come day, oh my soul. Yonder come day, day is a breaking. Sun is a rising in my soul. Yonder is a breaking. Yonder come day, oh my soul. Yonder come day. Sun is a rising in my soul. Walks are green and the world is sweet. The word is lying on my feet. I point my feet down that freedom line. Walking that line, I'm feeling fine. Sunrise, sunrise, oh yonder sunrise. Sun is a rising in my soul.
Well, that was fabulous. Can I bring you to my next place that I go? That would be awesome. Many, many years ago, even before I met Randy, I moved with my wife, Cheryl, down to Chicago to go to seminary. We were moving from Madison, Wisconsin, which was only about 2 to 3 hours away from Chicago. It's not much geographically speaking, but from a culture perspective, the change was huge. And it was the furthest away Cheryl had lived from her family and the furthest I'd lived away from mine. And it was a bit scary and lots different. And we found ourselves not enjoying the experience in Chicago. We found people were unfriendly and didn't make eye contact, and it felt dangerous and unsafe, and just we felt homesick a lot for the first few weeks we were there. And we grumbled and we mumbled and we complained about it to each other. And finally, my wife, who is smarter than I am, even back then, before she was a hypnotist, was also wise in the ways of brains, said, you know what? We have to change something. We're going to start counting friendly people we encounter in Chicago. And I said, well, that won't take very much. You're not playing along. Okay. All right. So for the next few days, we started counting friendly people that we found along our travels in Chicago. And it turns out we lost count. Friendly people were everywhere. And it was like a complete change had come over Chicago. And just by our changing our focus. Now, I am not a Pollyanna, and this is not a sermon about the law of attraction or the secret, which is a bad theology. Well, the law of attraction is not, but the secret definitely is. This is about focus. Where do you focus your attention, and how do you frame your experiences? My wife wisely figured out that we were framing our experiencing and focusing our attention on unfriendly people, and that's what we found. And when we changed our frame and changed our focus to friendly people, they were everywhere. And it completely changed our experience of Chicago for the next 4 years. I invite you right now to see about changing your focus. Take a minute right now and name out loud a blessing in your life. Excellent. I couldn't hear them all, but I heard that you did it, and so I appreciate that. I want you to take a second and note, how do you feel right now? You feel slightly better than you did just 2 minutes ago. That, my friends, is what celebrating abundance is all about. We learned another lesson in Chicago when we went to seminary. Seminary was difficult. It costs a lot of money. Chicago cost a lot more than living in Madison. I wasn't working anymore, and Cheryl did not have a job for the first 6 months that we were there. And at the same time, we experienced the death of one of her parents. And it was really hard. In the second year, it looked like we weren't going to be able to afford to stay anymore. I didn't know how we were going to pay rent. I didn't know how we were going to pay tuition. And I started to think that this was the worst decision I had ever come up with, and how I had dragged her down to Chicago. And again, we changed our focus. And we started trying to think of all the things we were grateful for and look for generosity. We started hosting potlucks for the student body because we had a very large student apartment. And everybody would come over and they would bring food. And then after the party, they would leave the food. To this day, my classmates think that Cheryl and I were the generous people who built a community through potlucks. And they don't know that what they were doing is feeding us when we couldn't buy groceries. That was a practice of generosity on everybody's part. The building manager let us skip rent for a couple of months. And I said, we can't pay this month. And he said, it's okay, I know where you live. But the best one was, I had to ask a friend for money. My friend Tom was serving in the Navy and stationed in Japan, and he had a wife and kids. And he heard that I was thinking of dropping out of seminary because I couldn't afford it. And he sent me a check for the tuition that I owed. And I said it was a loan, and he said, yep, you pay me back when you can. And I felt horrible about asking for it. And then the next day, a package arrived. And it was the boxed set, the deluxe box set of the Lord of the Rings trilogy. Tom had sent that too. Because in the note, it's okay, and you're being pretty hard on yourself. And just because you don't have the money doesn't mean you don't deserve to have some fun in life too. People believed in generosity, and they believed in us, and they gave, and they shared. And that made seminary possible for me and my wife, and taught us about focus and abundance. The difference between abundance and scarcity is not about the little green pieces of paper. It's about where you focus your attention and who you surround yourself with. Now, I wonder myself about your congregation and how you practice generosity. I looked through your website and your newsletters, and I see you have community dinners, which reminds me of my potlucks. I saw that you have a soup kitchen that you work with. You support your congregation through the auction. And of course, the kids announced the mitten tree earlier in the service. On a more practical note, this is the third time you've invited me into your pulpit. Thank you very much for that generosity. You're helping pay my bills and keep food on my table. Thank you. I assume that you pay your staff generously. I hope you do. These are all elements of generosity. The universal truth, my friends, is that there is enough. We are told that there is a scarcity, and we're raised on a scarcity model. It's taught to us by the concept of capitalism. But the real truth is that there's enough. We do not live in a world of scarcity. We live in a world of abundance. There's enough food on this planet to feed everybody on it. There's enough water on this planet to give and quench the thirst of everyone on it. The difficulty is where people are and what people are doing with the food and the water. We're taught that there is scarcity, and because there's scarcity, we become afraid, and fear leads to division. Division leads to greed. Greed leads to violence. Violence leads to shortages, and that brings us back to scarcity. Abundance, on the other hand, once you start focusing on the abundance, that leads to generosity. Generosity promotes community and connections and community promote compassion, and compassion leads us back to abundance. So right now there are shortages in the world. It would be Pollyannish to say there's not. But those shortages exist because we are creating them. And we can undo them. We can restore the balance and the flow and the natural world of abundance. That's why we're here. That's what we do together in our worship spaces. We name these universal truths and we try to practice the ideals. We try to transform one another and transform the world. And that transformation, that healing work is much needed. So I wonder what we're going to do next. And I wonder where you as a congregation are going to direct your energy. What's your plan as Unitarian Universalists of people who believe in abundance, people who might actually be celebrating abundance? How will you increase opportunities for transformation? Maybe you will make it easier for people to find you, or maybe you will find ways to make it easier for us to find each other. Maybe you work to find a better use for your space, or limit the drain on resources in the wider neighborhood. Maybe you'll look around and ask your neighbors what they truly want and need, and then make it happen. A woman at a congregation I served liked to tell this joke every pledge season. She would get up in front of the congregation and she would say, this was her first annual pledge report every year. Good news, everybody. We have all the money we need. There is enough. Bad news, everybody. It's in your pockets. That is true of so many of our resources, and it's definitely true in the aggregate. Any scarcity we have right now is self-imposed, by which I do not mean we blame the impoverished. I'm a community minister that depends on gig work, who just had to get a second job to keep the roof over my head. I know what it means to be without resources, and yet I do not consider myself poor, perhaps impoverished, but even that is a stretch. I have so much in my life to be thankful for. There's a difference between calling people poor and calling people impoverished. We like to call people poor. Well, maybe we don't, but some of the people on the talking heads on TV do. Poor gives them a label, gives them an identity, and it makes who they are related to how much they have. Whereas impoverished is an action word. It's a description. It means these people have less because somebody has made them so. I much prefer to call people impoverished because it reminds me that we live in a world of abundance, and some people are not practicing that way. Some people are hoarding. It doesn't have to be that way. Remember the meditation at the beginning where I asked you to something you were thankful for? Envision, if you can, in this meditation, the world as you wish it was, the world as you hope it will one day be. Find the dream that makes your heart sing and your soul fill with joy. Lynn Twist's reading talks about the universal truth of what we all want. We can get there if we want to. It's a question of will and choice and focus and money. Those small green pieces of paper. What do you want to do with them? Do you want this community to be a place of healing and a place of transformation? Do you want to transform real lives, yours and theirs? It's a matter of focus and intention, my friends. If you want to make a difference, you can, in the simplest of ways. As you plan for your next year, as you make your New Year's resolutions in your congregation and in your homes, think about the difference you want to make. Imagine what you and what we can accomplish together. And in your dream, as you're planning for the future, ask yourself, are you dreaming in a world of scarcity, or are you dreaming in a world of abundance? Your dream. Make it a good one. Make it a generous one. And celebrate abundance. Please join in singing our hymn of celebration, number 67. We sing now together.
In a moment, we'll extinguish the chalice, but I want to thank Reverend Craig for being with us again today. That was a really powerful reflection. So thank you for joining our community once again. So now please join me in the words that you see on the screen and in your order of service. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts and out into the world until we are together again.